Arizona Horizon's original host, Michael Grant, died earlier this week. Michael hosted Horizon for 25 years, covering everything from Sandra Day O'Connor's Senate confirmation hearings to the ASCAM scandal and all points in between. We remember Michael Grant with this interview from 2011, which celebrated Horizon's 30th anniversary. And here now to talk about that history is Michael Grant, Horizon's host from 1981 to 2006. It's good to have.
Who's counting?
25. That's a long time to be doing anything.
Yeah, the viewers thought so too.
It's good to see you here. Thanks so much for joining. I mean, 30 years ago.
Digs,
not bad, huh?
Yeah,
not
cool.
bad.
Yeah.
Let's talk. What was the idea behind Horizon?
Well, the basic idea, the station had been without a daily news show for a couple of years. There was, I want to say that there was a weekly news magazine that ran on like Saturday, Sunday. Bob Ellis, Chuck Allen, had an absolute belief that in particular a PBS affiliate, couldn't establish a local identity without a local news show. So it was needed for that purpose. And the other purpose that it was needed, quite honestly, was at that point in time, long form interviewing, actually spending something more than, let's say 4 15-second sound bites, was still pretty unusual. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was the McNeil-Lehrer at that point report, because it was only about half an hour. Nightline had just kicked on, but that was about it.
And then the idea for Horizon, it gets its shape, and they say, that Michael Grant guy, let's see if he's interested. Did you audition? How'd that work out?
Well, they contacted me, if I recall correctly, I want to say in the spring of 1981. And I had done some TV work for Channel 8 in the 1970s when I was in radio, and there was a very short live show, I think, called Arizona Interaction that I'd done. So they called me and asked if I'd be interested. And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like an interesting thing. I'm not sure that I can practice law full time and do five nights of television, but let me think about it. And we were mulling. It wasn't scheduled to start until the fall. And I said, sure, let's try it for 6 months or so. And then it turned out to be 25 years later.
That's a long 6 months.
Yeah.
In the beginning, now correct me if I'm wrong here, because this is a long time ago, but as the Iran hostage scandal and crisis was to Nightline, which basically spawned that program,
That's right.
The O'Connor confirmation hearing, if I remember correctly, pretty much got Horizon, if not up and going, certainly a nice lead-in.
No doubt it was a powerful kickoff, and of course it was wholly coincidental. We didn't know when we started talking about the show in the spring, looking to start it in the fall, that Sandra O'Connor was going to be nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court in July. But quickly occurred to mostly Chuck Allen that this would be an ideal. It was going to be very high profile, be an ideal opportunity. And so we went back to Washington and broadcast. And I think, Ted, it was the first time that Supreme Court confirmation hearings had been broadcast beginning to end. There certainly had been television coverage of them before, but I think that was the first time that you actually covered, in this case, it was 3 days of the confirmation hearing.
And if I remember correctly, or from what I've been told, a little bit of a fight with PBS on that one, because they weren't sure that Arizona should be doing all this after Arizona was doing all this.
There was both an Arizona bias, and also they wondered who the young kid from Phoenix was, and why should he be with Paul Duke.
Yeah, it worked out very well for you, worked out very well for them, and works out well for Horizon. Fondest moment in 25 years of Horizon?
Geez, fondest moment. Boy, that's a tough one. Certainly the O'Connor confirmation hearings, it's not a moment, but it's 3 days that are pretty much etched in the brain. I guess that one would be the one that would come to mind first.
Any stories you felt particularly uncomfortable covering?
In many respects, there were times on the Mecham story that I felt uncomfortable with it. It almost became, wrong term, but sort of oppressive. There was so much stuff going wrong, so many easy shots to take, trying to avoid easy shots and instead get to the thing. And just simply its duration. You know,
Yeah.
it kicks off effectively September of 1986. Doesn't wrap up until the spring of 88. And you know, certainly wasn't a week, and oftentimes there weren't very many days when there wasn't something, you know, going on. So it was almost fatiguing from that, you know, from that standpoint.
Especially when you're doing it. I mean, people
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I'm not tired of the story. Why are you?" Well, we're doing it every night. Is why
That's
I'm
right.
tired.
I mean,
favorite guest?
ooh, a lot of the Friday edition participants, for sure. John Colby, one of my you know, favorites of all time. Jana Boomersbach started off the show. Kevin Willey before she fled to Dallas. I mean, those are ones that, and I can't skip Howie Fisher.
Sure you can.
Although he's irritating.
Yes, he is. I inherited him from you. Yeah, Howie's great, and he's obviously is a lightning rod for both. People love him. Some people don't love him quite as much, but he does. He brings good information, and he's a heck of a reporter.
And he is one hard-working
yes, he
reporter.
Is. Least favorites, and be as candid as you can here. I mean, you know, we've all had interviews.
I should have thought about this.
You know, for example, when I was in radio, Charlton Heston just gave me the most rotten interview I think I've ever had in my life. He didn't want to do it, didn't want to be there. It was rotten from beginning to end.
Oh, you know what? Pat Paulson.
Pat Paulson?
Pat Paulson, you know, Paulson for president,
Sure.
laugh in, that kind of thing. For some reason, he was in town, and we booked him, and I thought, man, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. Well, I walked into the green room, and there he was, and I shook hands, said hi, Mike Grant, you know, big fan, you know, that kind of thing. It was just kind of lump-like. You know, we had thought that, well, this would be, you know, this politics show, so we bring on Paulson on this thing. Interview was the longest interview in my life, and he was given maybe 3-word answers.
So he was being Pat Paulson.
He was, well, and he in a grindingly, even for Pat, slow way. But it suddenly occurred to me, I'd read recently that he had bought a vineyard in Napa. So I thought, well, maybe I can, because we're only about 3 minutes into this thing. We've scheduled it for 10 or 12, and I'm dying here. So anyway, I said, hey, you know, did you just pick up a vineyard in Napa? Well, that just unleashed this tour.
Well, at least you had a way to get out of it. My way with Charlton Heston was thank you for joining us.
But not a whole lot.
Yeah. Gotta ask you, why'd you leave?
Oh, you know, I felt like I'd been driving between, at that time, Phoenix and Tempe for 25 years, five days a week. You know, enough. Certainly the show was great. I still enjoyed doing it, but I thought, you know, at some point in time, going to need to exit, and what the heck, might as well be now. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of, there was a lot of agonizing on my part because I enjoyed doing the show, but I just thought, you know, at some point you're going to have to bring the curtain down. So I think it was 2 or 3 months after
and
the
a way to do it gracefully as well.
Well, yeah, I hope it was that too.
Yeah. Do you miss it?
I do from time to time. I watch you. I watch other people. I look at it and I say, you know, I probably would have. That kind of thing.
Throw the TV, shoot the TV a couple of times, and then get it. Well, it's good to see you. We couldn't have done this 30.
And you do a great job.
Well, thank you, sir. And to follow you is a difficult task, and we're doing our best. But it's good to have you back on the show. Good to see you.
Same here. Take care.
As we said last night, Michael Grant, journalist, attorney, and good guy.